leadership is always evolving. We grow, we learn, and both from being around different people and being in jobs, maybe with bosses that we didn't like and bosses that empowered us, we continue to rethink and reflect, what does it mean to really be a good leader, and how do I build skills to be a better leader? Well, today's guest thought a lot about that for sure, especially thinking how she felt at the very beginning of her career when many would say, hey, that's not the way how you become a leader. And she realized, you know what? I'm not really sure if I like the way how they're telling me what a leadership is, because it didn't really feel natural. It felt forced. Anyone else felt that way? She realized how important authentic leadership is and why it's so important to pursue your voice, and especially when you become a parent and a mother or a father. And as we hold on and show up to the world with all these identities and roles, we rethink about what it means to fully show up as a person, and especially as a leader. So with further ado, I'm excited to introduce my guest today, Nicola Fitzpatrick. Nicola is the Director of Operations at Medtronic, where she has been a product development global leader with over 19 years of experience delivering measurable results in the medical device industry. She has been recognized for consistently exceeding deadlines and meeting business objectives while creating an energized work environment through effective communication at both local and global locations. She's an expert at all stages of medical device product lifecycle management, which can be easily applied to other industries. And more importantly, she's super excited to be a new mom and share her journey looking back at leadership and what it means and how she can be better, and hope she can inspire others to know that, hey, where you are right now is a good start. So very excited to have my friend Nicola here at St. Paul, Minnesota. Thank you so much for joining us. Very excited to have you here. So many questions and themes to dive into as we think about leadership and what's changing. And I am curious, for instance, right now you have been in your role leading for quite some time. What would you say you are excited about where leadership trend is heading overall and what you're also worried about?
The most exciting thing for me is the acceptance of different types of leadership styles. And this is something I've personally struggled with, in that I'm a little bit different. I'm a little bit quirky, and I don't have this standard approach to the corporate leadership style. So what I've loved over the past number of years, that the diversity of leadership type is changing. And that's been really exciting for me personally. What worries me a little bit is that if we lose that spark, if we lose the will, I suppose, or just the need to have diversity in leadership types, or if we take the whole diversity approach to an extreme. And that's where I personally am a little bit worried that you have diversity of thought and diversity through race and sex, which I think is amazing and I'm a big advocate for. I think when we focus on diversity in those categories, we forget about diversity of leadership style in a way, and we may conform people to a certain type of style that is claustrophobic and it's not them. So I think that's where I worry a little bit.
It's a really important point, and I want to dig a little bit deeper. So, Nicola, bring us back to way back, maybe in your first job or when you were building your career. Where were you, and what was your perception of leadership then?
My very first role, I would have been an associate engineer, and my perception of leadership was you follow what that person asks you to do. I felt those leaders, I felt personally that they were performing per script. And sometimes it didn't feel authentic, if that makes sense. So it felt that there was more of a yes person mentality. And maybe that was the culture back then, and maybe more of a culture of tell them what they want to hear. And when I say that, it's how people communicate sometimes to senior leadership. communicating what they want to hear as opposed to what the reality is are two very different things. And I think you can package those things differently. You have to be honest and truthful. So for me, I struggled a little bit with that and the understanding of what a leader is and what they should be doing, as opposed to how to react to support the business. So what I've learned through my career is the type of leader I don't want to be, if that makes sense. So I have loads of examples of I don't want that to happen to me. So I had a leader who his advice at the time was tell them what they want to hear. And that's so against me as a person and my values. I struggled with that. Or I had a leader tell me before that, hey, Nicola, you need to be this type of person to succeed. And I tried it and it just suffocated me as a person. I struggled really hard in my role and even how to execute because I felt I was so fake. And I was trying to be this fake person all the time. It just took so much energy. Whereas when I took a step back and asked myself, what kind of leader do I want to be? What are my values? How can I bring my best self to what I do? I feel I've really found my feet in the past number of years. This has been a long journey for me. I've been in the workforce for nearly 20 years. So next year I'll be working 20 years as an engineer or in that environment. So I think it's been a journey and there's been lots of pivots for me. But I do feel the last 5 years, I've really come into my own as a leader, understood what my strengths are, what I can bring to the table. But equally, I have a leader who sees those strengths and helps me and promotes me to bring my best self to what I do. And that combination has worked really well for me.
That's really powerful. And thank you for sharing, because I think often we don't share enough about that. Hey, it's a journey. And there's all these things that it's influencing and shaping us, what we think leadership is and how we feel about it. But something changed. Tell us what changed. And was there a tipping point? Was it an event or was it something gradual?
For me, it was gradual. I just felt personally I wasn't developing the way I wanted to be. I felt I could give more and do more, and I wasn't getting the opportunities. So I just took a step back and just looked at where I was, where I needed to go, and what I needed to do for myself. So a key part of that was I did go back and do an MBA. I did a part-time MBA, so it worked really well for me. I was able to still progress my career, but equally, I was learning with amazing people. And there's so many people from different industries I was able to learn from. And I think I was just really wanted to learn and wanted to share those learnings with my current employers so that I could better not just myself, but my employees as well. So I live by the philosophy of if you always do what you always did, you always get what you always got. How can we do things different to have a different outcome? So using that thought process, that's how I started to apply myself. And to be fair, I did see success with that. And I know it's a cliche to be an authentic leader, but that is what I did. I just went back to being me and I started bringing the best parts of me to work and to those that I mentor and coach through my current role.
How would you define good leadership now? And how is that different from your past definition?
Yes, it's a good question. Good leadership for me is someone who is present, there to listen, and someone who you can just easily contact and not afraid to contact. I think sometimes there is this fear of reaching out to a leader. And for me, my whole process is, I work in a manufacturing environment. I have product builders who are part of my team. So my philosophy is it doesn't matter where you are from a title perspective. Everyone has a voice, everyone is valued. And with that baseline or that foundation, a great leader is someone that anybody can reach out to if they have a grievance and are comfortable doing that and having that conversation. And I've had that through my career and I love it. I love when someone calls me out on something or says, hey, we could have done this a better way, and we talk it through. And that's something I love personally because it helps me grow, but it gives that individual a voice as well. So for me, good leadership is just being present, being there and being willing to listen, but equally being vulnerable. and saying you don't have all the answers, because we don't as leaders. And that's why you have a team around you that together you'll have those answers or find a solution. So I think for me, that's something that I seek out in a leader. And I do gravitate to people who have a lot of experience, to be honest, because I personally believe that they've seen so much, and those life learnings and skills are something that I gravitate to. So I do get curious and I reach out to those nuggets of people who have that information. And yeah, that's something I enjoy.
Love it. Love it. Tell me a little bit more. How big is your team now? How many people are you overseeing? And what are the type of projects that you often have to, I guess, kind of understanding the day-to-day as a leader?
Yep, perfect. I currently have 9 people reporting into me. And these are really experienced individuals. They're super. So I have supervisors and program managers and then senior program managers. So I have very experienced team reporting into me. And then the beauty of my role at the moment is that I'm growing an organization at the moment, which I'm really excited about. So I work in medical device, it's new product development, and we are building a new therapy. So with the new therapy, we have new products around it to help support our patients. So with that extended team, our organization that I'm building, we have just over 50 people, and it's global. So we are based in Ireland, in the US, and also in Mexico. And that's something I love as part of my role. So when you ask me about day to day, it's a lot of calls. I'm not going to lie. It's a lot of calls because we're a global team. And it's a lot of solution driven conversations. So people come to me because of my experience, but also because of my network within Medtronics. And also I'm very problem solving person. So if someone reached out to me, we bounce ideas off each other, and we would talk through it and we'd figure out the plan together, or we use it as a coaching or mentoring session where the individual who's reached out to me ends up with the plan. And they always knew it was there. It was only a matter of asking the right questions to get to the right answer. So there are those day-to-day activities as a functional manager or a support within the operations organization. So I primarily focus on manufacturing. And then the flip side of manufacturing is there's issues, and that's knee-jerk reactions, and you need to figure out really good solutions and quick fixes, because we're working with medical devices, and quality is number one and patient safety is number one, and that's how we operate. So it's dynamic. Anything could happen on a given day, and it's really weird. Everything always happens on a Friday. When you're trying to finish your weekend, an issue crops up. So hopefully people in a manufacturing environment or industry can relate to that in some way, shape, or form.
And I assume also being global is helpful, but also kind of looking out for the time zones. I almost wonder, I hope that you make sure you sleep and rest. What advice and tip do you have in managing when you have such a global team and in a global company with different time zones? Because I think it's a whole other issue and different challenge and skills as well.
Yeah, I think it's been a balancing act. So what has really helped me is obviously I moved location. So I was on the West Coast.
In San Francisco.
And then I moved on Central Time Zone. Correct. Yeah, I was in San Francisco. And then in 2020, we moved to Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Yeah.
That 2 hours difference has made a massive impact on my life and my lifestyle. And the big reason for that is instead of having an 8-hour time difference between San Francisco and Ireland, it's 6 hours. That means I've gained 2 hours with my team in Ireland, which has been life-changing. So instead of having calls at 5 or 6 a.m., I can still start the day at 8 a.m. and I get amazing crossover between my West Coast teammates, but also with my team in Ireland. So for me, that move alone was significant from a lifestyle perspective. And it was one of the big drivers for moving as well. And yeah, it's worked out in my favor. How do I make it work? I think what's really important for me, and something I've learned throughout my career, not just being as a functional manager, I was in project management, program management as well, understanding what's important to people. I have team members and their family is number one. If their family is number one, I'm not going to set up a call at 6 p.m. in the evening. They need to be at home with their family. So when you have a global team, my biggest advice I would give to leaders or anyone who's in functional management is understand what's important to your team, and then do your best to try and accommodate what their currencies are. what is that important value for them. If you work around that, you're going to have a team that really respects you and who'll support you. So I think for me, that is something I've learned throughout my career. And it's something that served me really well, but it shows that you're very respectful to that individual.
And speaking of family, I know you're a new mom as well. Congratulations for your family to start that chapter, and also opportunities and challenges. And so shed a little bit more light. Also having family abroad as well. How do you balance all of that?
I'll be honest, it's hard. And when they say it takes a village to rear a family, I can see why. We've a beautiful daughter who's nearly 10 months old. I've been so fortunate with my employer that I was able to take 6 months total, 24 weeks fully paid maternity leave. It was supported by my boss. My peers were amazing as well. That was just such a mental relief to me, knowing that I had this time available and I was supported by amazing team members and friends to take that time off. I think for me, it was really important to take that time off. And I did. I did not work. I did not log in to work. I really was very European about it. And I did take the time off. I needed it personally to heal, but I also needed to bond. And when you become a mom and your previous title was Director of Operations, now I'm mom, I'm wife, I'm Director of Operations. Like, you gain a title, which has been amazing, but definitely challenges. When I was going back to work, I struggled a little bit on what my role was going to be because we had a reorganization while I was out on maternity leave. So coming back into work and figuring out what my purpose was, how do I help people? Where do I add the most benefit? I struggled with that, to be completely honest, but I did find my footing after a few months. The other part I struggled with as a new mom and as a leader was that I thought I felt pressure, and maybe it was me putting pressure on myself to hit the ground running and to be fully up to speed. So I'd been out of the projects that I was supporting and my team for 6 months. There was decisions made when I was out on maternity leave, and that's fine. You work around what decisions were made and you try to execute. But I found myself the very first day I was back in the office trying to be up to speed on everything. I will admit that I had thousands of emails and I did just hit delete because that was in the past. So that was very refreshing to do that, because if it's in the past, you can't do anything about it. But that's something I struggled with, was that balance of trying to come back into the workplace as a new mom, but trying to prove yourself that, hey, you've taken this extended period of time off. I'm still able to do it all. And I'm learning that you can't do it all. You have to prioritize sometimes, and you need to be okay with that prioritization, like at peace with yourself, and don't beat yourself up about it.
Could you share an example of how we can know how to prioritize and what we do? What are situations you've had to make those decisions?
Yes, this week has been pretty tough. My daughter was sick with a bug, and I don't have my family here. So my family are all in Ireland, and I have wonderful in-laws, and my husband just happens to be away for this week. And Murphy's Law applied and everything went wrong. So we introduced our daughter to daycare last week, and she was in daycare 3 days. On day 4, she was very ill and I had no option. So thankfully, I was able to work from home. I was trying to work from home. It wasn't working. I could not do both. It's physically not possible to mind a child and work at the same time. And I just had to make that choice at noon, saying, sorry, I can't do this. And I had to stop work to care for my child. And that was my priority then. Was there guilt associated with from a work perspective? Yes. And the stuff and things I needed to get done, I couldn't. People are extremely understanding in those situations, which I really appreciate. And it's really a testament to the amazing people I work with. But again, as a female, as a new mom, you feel like you're letting people down. So it's just balancing that need. And it's interesting. This week, I felt I've had to work harder and more to compensate for that time. But that's an expectation I put on myself. No one asked that from me. So I think that's something I need to be mindful of as I go through this journey. And this has been the first time that this has ever turned up for me. So this particular situation when poor Kira was sick. And so I'm just trying to balance that. And I know there's going to be more. So this is just a journey for me. And there will be times when both I and my husband are home, who's going to have to take that step back as Kira has more illnesses, because that's what I'm learning. Daycare presents a lot of illnesses. So
Well, thank you, daycares, both for the goods and bads, needing to look out for all of it. And thank you, Nicola, for humanizing just the wholesome of both the joy and the challenges that are very, very real. I hope she feels better very soon. And thank you for still making time to be here in the midst of this. We'll send good thoughts your way and to the family, so that way she has speedy recovery. But you're hitting on something really key, which is, I feel like it's 2024. There's still so much data, research. Why are we still not getting this? Why are we still having this problem? Because I think from a societal point of view, there's just so much benefit if we have better maternity support, paternity support, childcare support. I mean, they're our next generation of futures. Like, they are going to be the audience who's going to help change new policies, set new innovations. It is not wasted. And in fact, even more probably the best investment we are doing as a society to make sure we take care of our future and, of course, not have the parents burn out. And yet the very examples you're sharing is very real. And in fact, I'm so grateful that you got to have and be in an organization that is supported. But as we know here as we speak, unfortunately, many of the other individuals around the world, whether it's due to country, company, even if colleagues are amazing, they just don't have that support. And so I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Like, if you had the magic wand, and I understand for folks who's listening, maybe we'll start with the ideation part. But what do you think we have to be really doing and being more serious about to address this maybe systematic problem of like how we think about parenting, and especially even as a leader, to continue to grow and succeed? Because I think on a macro other scale, the other problem has been, especially maybe for female leaders and even for male leaders, that they would not have kids because it's like, you know what, I can't, even though I want to have children, even if I want to get married or like, and again, like for some people, it's a personal choice, but I think it's a really important point to raise that it's become an either or, and it doesn't have to be. Why are we making it an either or choice? So big theme.
Yeah, it is. There's so much there to unpack, but I think for me, I just take a step back from it and go, what I know, even with myself, if I'm not 100% okay in work, I'm not my best self. And this is where I struggle a little bit. For an individual who's had a baby and 6 months or 6 weeks maternity leave and they're back, how can you physically and mentally be okay coming back to work? And I work in a mostly male-dominated function in operations. I've had team members who are dads and they do take paternity leave, and I embrace it and I think it's fantastic. So irrespective of maternity leave or paternity leave, we should be offering this to employees. If your team is healthy and happy, it speaks for itself. The results are there. It's a no-brainer. And I think for me, as someone who's Irish, when I came here to the US, I'm on disability leave for being pregnant. I don't understand why pregnancy is considered a disability. So that's something that I've had to get my head around when you apply for FMLA benefits through the US. So even the terminology we use for someone who is pregnant or carrying a baby.
What does the acronym mean for those who don't know FMLA?
FMLA is Family Medical Leave Absenteeism. And then if you look into the details, you get 12 weeks. My understanding within the US is everyone's entitled to it for 12 weeks, paid or unpaid. And that's where the difficulty is the unpaid part. And I think if politicians or the government could just look at it as, hey, these are future taxpayers. If you just put it down to tax and money, would that change the perception of give people time? Like, if you look at having a family as an economy driver, I know some economies are struggling with this. How can you reward it? And one of the ways to reward are through maternity and paternity benefits. And I think we need to recognize this adoption and surrogacy and whoever is making a family in whatever way you want to. How do you ensure that we're looking after those individuals, keeping them safe and healthy so that when they return to the workforce, they're returning as their best selves. And that's when you get the best rewards out of people. Not that you've worked 15 hours a day and you're absolutely depleted of energy and you can't support what you're doing yourself. You can't look after yourself. You can't execute and work, or you can't look after your family or friends or your dog or your cat, whatever it is. That's where I really struggle. And that to me was a big driver behind being a leader, to take all that time off and to show you can do it. You can take that time off and you don't get, my hope is, and I know it's not going to happen, but this won't go against me as I try to progress. And I know that's not going to happen. My performance shouldn't be valued less just because I had a baby or just because I've taken a holiday for 24 weeks, which it wasn't a holiday. It was eye-opening, to be completely honest. It was busy.
No, thank you so much for sharing that. For folks who are listening, I think especially whether they are a parent or a leader or anyone, I mean, we all know somebody who are in any of those roles or in those hats. And so thank you for humanizing it, making it real. And as you have honestly pointed out, it's not going to be one solution, but by raising awareness and understanding. And I think the theme that's coming back to me is actually the very first comment you shared as we were starting this conversation, which is the power of authenticity, like the fact that we can also talk about this even openly or explore these different themes, even if it's messy. We're not permitting people to show up authentically, fully as themselves. And so the opportunity to just even hash out, talk about it, I think is so key. And so thank you, Nicola, for modeling that, being here to share it with us openly and exploring all of it. I'm curious, what's your kind of final wisdom and advice that you'll share with our listeners as they think about wherever they are in their journey and how they can be a better leader in thinking about all of this too?
Yeah, but I think the biggest advice I'd give to someone is that if someone is asking you to change your leadership style, you have to ask, is this the right place for me? It comes back to being your authentic self. And it will be really difficult to try and be something you're not. I'm not saying that I am perfect. I'm not by any means. I try to better myself and I take feedback really well and try to improve. But I would say if someone is fundamentally saying that you have to be a completely different person in how you lead, I would say that would be a little bit of a red flag for me. So be your true self and be open and honest. I would say the other bit of advice I would give is that, and this is a little bit of opposite advice, for people who work as leaders, it's difficult. You do not get thanked when you're a leader. And I think there is an expectation as a leader to give. And I know my leadership style is to give a lot of myself to other people to ensure they're okay, to ensure the environment they're working in is okay. It's okay to ask that leader, how are you doing? Are you okay? Or just a simple thank you. That little bit of acknowledgement does go a long way. I do think that anyone who is a functional manager or in leadership roles, they do take on a lot. And just to set that little bit of perspective for individuals who are reporting into leaders, sometimes it can feel like a thankless job and it can be a lonely road. And it's something just people always want to progress to the next thing, which I fully support. Just be mindful that the higher you go up, it is a little bit more lonely every step you take. And just to be aware of that and that thank yous become less and less, and just be prepared for that as a leader. It is something that I've not struggled with, but I've definitely noticed more as I've progressed through my career.
No, thank you for sharing those. It kind of reminds me of, forgetting the specific phrase, but you know how when things go well, people don't compliment, but when things fall apart, they definitely know who to criticize, whether it's an event, whether it's at an organization. And so, shout out really to all the leaders. I know, like, especially we're in a workplace and any point of course, history, there's never always been an easy time, but I think there's a lot more complexity that's being demanded of leaders today, of expectation, excellence, both technical expertise, as well as the many soft skills, quote, quote, soft skills that are intangible, but very tangible and very difficult to navigate, and the expectation to continue to hone. And so thank you for highlighting that, to know that it's a continuing journey. Final question, but not the least, but what's the best way folks can stay in touch with you and follow up with you?
Oh, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can look me up on LinkedIn. Hopefully you'll share that. yeah, please, if people want to chat more about leadership or just learn about my career journey or advice, I'm more than welcome to chat to people. And yeah, just find me on LinkedIn and we'll make some time.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And folks, you know the drill. We always share our guests' information in the show notes. You can find that at our blog page. If you cannot find, just simply email us at info@innovatorsbox.com. But Nicola, thank you so much. This was such a treat. I know folks will revisit many of these conversations. And we're just so grateful for your leadership and reminding us in how we can lead as a new mom and also in all that joy. And so thank you so much. And folks, we'll be back again with another story soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Nicola, for such an inspiring journey in time with us and reminding us that you don't have to have all the answers from the beginning, but it starts with that awareness and gut check to say, is this who I really am? And who am I really, and how do I strive to be? As meta as those questions sounds, I feel every time I ask them, I learn something new about myself, and I'm humbly reminded that leadership is a journey, and there is really no end to how you go about it. So continue to invest, grow, and I appreciate you all for tuning in today for another story and reflecting on these insights. So Nicola, thank you again, and thank you all for joining me. We'll be back again next week as we continue to think about the theme Rethinking Leadership, how this time we think about growth. How do we then train people differently, and what is perhaps the way we should think differently about it? Curious? Well, tune in. I'll see you next week at Dear Workplace by Innovators Box. This is your host, Monica Kang. Have a lovely day. Thanks again for joining us. This is your host, Monica Kang at Dear Workplace, and I'm so glad you are here. This show is possible thanks to our amazing podcast team who has worked with me at Innovators Box Studios. Shout out to audio engineering and producing by
Sam Lamer,
audio engineering assistant by
Ravi Ladd,
website and marketing support by
Cree Pandey,
graphic support by
Leah Orsini,
Christine Eribal,
and original music by Innovators Box Studios. And writing, interviewing, podcasting, directing, and all that jazz by me, Monica Kang. Share us your feedback and suggestions as we continue to look to improve and answer the questions that you have about the workplace. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon.